Now, Leah Thomas is a man, and when he competed against men, other males in swimming, he, I believe, was in 452nd, somewhere around their place nationally. He transitioned to be a woman, started competing against the females, and then won, like the national championship.
Thank you so much, Jamiee, for joining us. Now, I want to talk about the latest on the Supreme Court and trans issues. What is going on? What is the decision that they're potentially going to make? And how does it impact women and girls across America?
Right. Well, thank you for having me. Always a pleasure to be on. And it's a very exciting time in America. Finally, it feels like we have the momentum instead of the trans rights activists who have been pushing this delusion and just really regressive ideology on youth and just on society as a whole. Yesterday, the Supreme Court heard oral arguments for, I forget if it, I know there's two cases total. I'm not sure if they made it to the second one yesterday or if they just got through one, but there's two different cases that they're hearing that will determine if states have the right and if the government, I believe federally, can therefore have the right to ban biological males from women and girls sports, which is insane that we're even at this point, in our culture where the highest court in the land has to decide on this. Like if you would have told somebody 10 years ago that this is what would be happening, I think everybody would look at you like you're crazy because it's just such a common sense issue. Like, of course, women and girls deserve their own spaces in sports. So we're really hopeful. No decision has come back yet, but we're very hopeful that, common sense will prevail here and will be the law of the land.
So I know that those on the other side would say, well, trans athletes should be able to participate in sports just like anyone else. And the idea that there's a kind of physical difference between the trans athletes and, the so-called cisgender athletes is wrong because hormones and the hormone therapies sort of balance it all out. So actually it is fair to have trans people in the sports in which they identify. How do you respond to those arguments?
I mean, I think that's just completely provably false and has been proven false. I mean, you see what happens when these mediocre males, let's take Leah Thomas, for example, the woman or the transgender woman who competed against Riley Gaines in swimming during college, during the NCAA competition. Now, Leah Thomas is a man. And when he competed against men, other males in swimming, he, I believe, was in 452nd, somewhere around their place nationally. He transitioned to be a woman, started competing against the females, and then won, like the national championship. So, and there are many such cases where this is, the outcome. So I think it's a ridiculous statement. Obviously, biology matters. Biology cannot be overruled by injectable steroids. I guess they can help you present a little more feminine, but you will never be able to erase your hardwired DNA that gives you an advantage over women and girls. It's absolutely ridiculous. And, if trans people want to compete in sports, they can either do so against their biological sex or, start a transgender league and have all the fun in the world you want. But you do not have the right to put women and girls in harm's way. First of all, it's very dangerous. We've seen numerous occasions where girls and female athletes are hurt very badly. I mean, there was that case in, I believe it was a volleyball game in high school where a female athlete got a concussion from one of the trans-identified males playing against her, spiking a volleyball in her head at like freaking 90 miles an hour. I mean, it's very dangerous, first and foremost. Secondly, it's just not fair. Girls work their whole lives. I mean, if you're an athlete, if you're a female athlete that gets into collegiate sports, or even not, but like, let's say you are someone that makes it that far, you are training, you are dedicating your entire life from the time you can probably start walking as a toddler to this sport and to being the best in your field. For just a mediocre male to come in, say that they're trans. I mean, many of them don't even have to take the hormones. There's no one checking this. You can just say, "Oh, I'm a woman now." And I mean, that's how lax these laws have been and these requirements, of which there are very few. You can just identify however you want, come in and steal scholarships, steal spots on teams, and steal championships from these girls who have dedicated their lives to it. And it's just, I find it funny, like all the feminists who just a few years ago were marching in the streets for the women's march for female rights. Where are they? They're silent. They're standing up and defending men over women and girls, and it's mind blowing, the hypocrisy, and I think it just exposes them entirely as frauds.
There are those who say this is basically discrimination against trans people, and there are so few cases of trans people being in these sporting competitions and so on, that this is clearly just overhyped and just exclusionary to those rare cases of trans people who just want to participate in the sport that they identify as.
I think there's what, about 1 million trans people in America now. Not sure globally, but it's about 1% of the population, I think. Or maybe even less. No, I think right now it's about 1% of the population, at least here. Now, I mean, that's not nothing. That's a lot of girls' places that are getting stolen, a lot of potential for girls to be hurt. And I'm of the mind that even one spot taken by a man that belongs to a woman is too many. I ask the people who present that argument, how would you feel if it was your daughter who lost their spot, or your daughter who got a concussion, or your daughter that was paralyzed, from having to fight a male? I think that that's a straw man, and I don't think it really matters, because I think, like I said, one is too many. It's just not right. It's a matter of morals. It's a matter of safety. And, you never see it go the other way. Nobody ever has to say, save boys sports, save men's sports. It's just the women. It's just the girls. And so it's very sad to see so many people being cowardly and choosing the side of stronger males over women. So,
But aren't sports more about participation and having fun rather than, this sort of rampant competition idea? That's, again, another argument people say. This is just about, look, let people live, let people just be, this is all just a bit of fun.
no, I don't think so. I've played basketball and tennis my entire life. I never made it, collegiate or beyond, but I played from the time I was like 4 years old, and it was always very serious for me. We're not, I don't think anybody would ever say that about men playing sports, that it's just fun and games. It's just go out there and have some fun. I mean, yeah, you want people to have fun, but it's about more than that. It's about much more than that. So no, I don't think that that's true at all.
Do you think that states should have the right to do this, or should this be done at a federal level? Because if the federal government is able to decide on a transgender sports ban or whatever, then surely the Democrats could then equally come in and overturn this, when they get Congress.
Well, I think it needs to be codified into law. I do think it should be federalized. I think it should be global. I just think that this whole ideology and regressive nonsense and dangerous nonsense should be put in the dustbin of history where it belongs. Once it's law, it's a lot harder to overturn. So, we're making progress. Like President Trump has put executive orders into place, and that's great for now. But like you said, if a Democrat ever takes power, as the president with an executive order, they can just, reverse that immediately on day one. So it's not enough. And that's why I think the Supreme Court, these cases are so important. And our team, we flew some of our directors out to DC yesterday for the event, and they were there. We can't let it stand, and we're honored and proud to be part of history, making our voices heard.
Now, this topic as a political topic in America seems to have been less impactful in the 2025 elections. So in Virginia, you had Glenn Youngkin, the governor, who was very vocal on this stuff. Obviously, he couldn't stand again for election, but his the Republican candidate lost very, very badly in Virginia. Do you think that this these kind of topics around transgender in sports and everything, is that having less potency when it comes to American elections?
I think right now it's not as big of an issue to people because of the president that we have. And, things have been culled a bit. Like just yesterday, I'm from Milwaukee, Wisconsin. I live in Wisconsin, and just yesterday, it was the two biggest children's hospitals in our state came out and saying that they're pausing all gender affirming care for minors due to actions taken by the federal government and the Trump administration threatening to withhold Medicare and Medicaid from hospitals that do provide these services to children, which is, I put gender affirming care in quotes because we like to call it child sterilization and mutilation. We like to say what things really are, but people know it as gender affirming care. But, that's just an example how things are being kind of pushed. This whole agenda is being culled a bit because of the actions of the Trump administration. So I don't think it's as prevalent of an issue in people's minds as they're voting. And on that same hand, I think that like how Democrats won big in these certain elections, I think that Trump is a very polarizing figure. You either support him very much or you hate him very much, and I think that Democrats winning when Trump is president shows that these issues like immigration take priority in their minds over this right now. So
you mentioned one case in Wisconsin about the gender affirming care for minors, which is a very weird euphemistic term. Has that sort of replicated across the country? Have you, since Donald Trump became president, have you seen lots of cases? Where's the momentum when it comes to transgender surgeries and hormones for children across America?
Definitely. I mean, since he's taken office, there's been a domino effect. Just dozens of hospitals around the country have taken these same measures and ended the chemical castration and mutilation of minors under the guise of gender affirming care. They're scared, they don't want to lose their funding or worse. And yeah, it's been amazing. And even prior to Trump taking office, when Gays Against Groomers started in 2022, there were 4 states in the United States that had either restricted or banned gender affirming care for minors. Before Trump took office, we along with our allies and just people around the country who support this issue had brought that number to 25, I think, or maybe 26. So it was already banned completely in 25, I think, states by the time Trump took office. But the remainders, there are still hospitals that are doing it. There are still blue states that are holding out and have these egregious practices and worse. But the trend is going, and has been since Trump has been in office, the other way, in our favor, in reality and morality's favor, which is great to see. But we need laws codified.
When it comes to the transgender issue moving forward into the midterms this year, do you think it will have a major impact, in certain races? Do you think, is this going to come up on the doorstep? Is this going to be one of those issues where one side or the other benefits? Is there going to be a lot of discussion around transgenderism?
I don't think it'll be as much as it was in previous election years, just due to the Trump administration, being able to really put a damper on all of it. It's still out there, but our job has definitely gotten easier since he's been in office. I hope that people do make it an issue, because any child that this is happening to is a crime against humanity. It is one of, I believe, the worst form of child abuse that exists on Earth. So I hope so, but I just don't know. I don't think it'll be as big of an issue in 2020 as it was in 24 or 22, or but I hope people still care, and I hope candidates still speak about it and make it part of their platform for sure.
Jamiee, thank you so much for joining us. Appreciate it.
Thanks so much for having me.